Hello and welcome to another episode of Wrestling Rewind, our series where we take a look back at all the WrestleManias and all the pay-per-views from WWF's history. We are Gimme a Whole Year. I'm Ant.
I'm Dom.
And today we're looking at WrestleMania 2, the biggest sequel of all time to the amazing WrestleMania 1.
You what? Fucking shit, mate.
It's a poor show. Let's...
Yeah, it was WrestleMania 2, multiple locations.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Los Angeles, Chicago, and where the hell else was it? That was it. Was that Los Angeles and Chicago? That was it.
Well, Uniondale, New York, Rosemont, Illinois, and Los Angeles, California.
Oh, yeah, it was right there. It was right there in front of me. See? Research. Don't do it. It's pointless. So, 3 locations. New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago.
April the 7th, 1986, and it took place on a Monday. This is the only WrestleMania that ever took place on a Monday.
It's probably why it was...
What, because everyone was drunk after the Sunday after?
Yeah, probably, yeah. Probably why it was a subpar.
It was poor, wasn't it?
Subpar.
So, Jim Crockett in 1985, his event Stockhead had 2 locations. Do you think that this was Vince McMahon trying to outdo Jim Crockett a little bit?
Easily.
Yeah, I think so.
We all know how big Vinnie Mac's ego is.
So let's have it in 3 locations. And what did you think about it being in 3 locations?
Yeah, it was kind of muddled, really.
It was awful. You had different commentators in different places.
They dealt with it okay. I mean, the best they could, but it was still terrible.
It was, yeah. The venue commentators in New York was Vince McMahon and Susan St. James, who was an old film star and TV star.
Sounds like a porn star.
It does, and we all know after the wrestling classic from last one, Vince likes his Susans. Do you think Vince has a thing for Susans?
I bet Vince was in there.
I think he tried and didn't get anywhere.
He was like, hey.
Susan St. James, what did she know about wrestling? Not a lot.
Jack.
There was, again, I think there was 18 celebrities in this. Again, a celebrity fest. There was no need for it whatsoever.
Oh, man, the whole football versus
Battle Royale, which we'll come to later on.
It was all over it, man. It was all over it.
It was, yeah. Gorilla Monsoon and Gene Oakland and Kathy Lee Crosby were the commentators in Rosemont, Illinois. Rubbish, again. Gene is great.
Better.
Not Gene. Gorilla was great, but without Jesse... didn't work as well. He didn't have the colour to cut through it. And then the best commentary team, in my opinion, because I thought Jesse Ventura and Elvira, who was one of the commentators, I thought they had quite good chemistry, actually. I thought she did a good job. And she looked great. She was hot.
It was actually interesting. Yeah. She got involved with the matches a bit more than the others. Which was nice, but I like I say, I think you listed it pretty much in order of importance there.
Yeah.
I thought that like I say, there was some good points to the last 2 teams, but the first commentary team,
Vince McMahon and Susan, was just
terrible,
awful, and brought no charisma.
No
to
chemistry,
no
chemistry, no charisma.
With Jesse Ventura and Elvira was Alfred Hayes as well. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, good old Lord Alfred.
So the show starts off with a rendition of America the Beautiful, as is traditional in WrestleMania.
Indeed.
This time it's not Mean Gene singing it. We have a small-known singer called Ray Charles.
Yeah.
Good opening. Great little story, actually, from Georgie Animal Steele. He said he went into the dressing room to see Ray Charles, went to turn the light on, and Ray Charles said to him, "I don't need that light on, boy." Because obviously Ray Charles, for our younger audience, was blind. But just a nice little story there from Georgie Animal Steele.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Started off with a promo by Roddy Piper. If Mr. T can knock him out, Roddy Piper will retire.
Good heel work.
Then he says, "Never will I shave my head and dye myself black."
Yeah, that was racist as hell.
There was so much racism in this. I mean, Roddy Piper as well had a real racist thing a couple of years later where he paints himself half black because he's against. I can't remember exactly who he's against, but the reason for painting himself half black was that he could deliver the promo better than he could, which is just so racist.
Yeah, Roddy Piper, for all the good he did for the industry, he had some weird ideas, man.
Yeah, just weird ideas.
He was a colourful character to say the least, you know. And that's not a pun, you know, to the situation. He had a few screws loose, and that's what made him so addictive to watch, I think. But yeah, we can't deny that there was some serious racism.
Yeah.
To that.
So the first match was Paul Ordenoff and Don Morocco with Mr. Fuji.
I love the way you say Ordenoff.
Why?
It's Paul Orndorff.
Okay, so I just don't say it right.
Carry on saying Ordenoff.
Ordenoff. Can I just say Mr. Wonderful?
You can say it either way if you want, but I like Ordenoff. So Mr. Wonderful, Paul
Mr. Wonderful,
Ordenoff, magnificent Don Morocco, Mr. Fuji. I like Mr. Fuji.
Everyone likes Mr. Fuji. He got involved in the matches quite well. Didn't take as many bumps, I'd say, as someone like Bobby Heenan or someone like that.
He
but
need
was
to.
Good. No.
Sharp dressed man.
He
always looked sharp dressed. And so I mean, at the time with the Yokozuna, where he kind of fit the stereotype. Then.
Yeah.
But then he had the.
Yeah, but he lost the black outfit then.
The suit. Yeah, I love that.
I love that. Yeah, I missed it when he was with Yokozuna.
It was a solid match. Orndorff looked strongest, I thought. Like I say, a lot of count outs. They used the count out.
Yeah. Well, the match started off, and then instead of having a promo, there was a promo played over the match, which was just weird. So he was watching these guys wrestling as they was talking to each other. Probably a time issue. But I'm sure there's other things.
Definitely a time issue, man. Like they still were figuring stuff out, weren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they had so many time issues back in that time.
Two good ring technicians, but not a lot to say about the match.
It was one of the good feuds of that kind of time.
Yeah,
I think.
especially with Bob Orton as well involved.
There was a lot of tension between the two. That kind of carried on over a long period of time, and I feel like this match kind of. It was just really meh.
It was Paul, yeah.
But the tension between the two and the anger and the whole count out thing, like it added to the frustration.
A count out is frustrating for an audience, and I feel so sorry for the people that went to the New York segment of the show because
it was frustrating for us.
It was really bad. The ending was sloppy. The crowd ended up shouting bullshit.
Yeah.
At the end of it, which is a sign that the show wasn't that great. It was a double count out, but they had no announcement of it until Mr. T's promo started happening. Yeah. And then they made the announcement over Mr. T's promo. So Mr. T was difficult to understand anyway. Yeah. Couldn't understand a word of it. So messy, and I suppose with the sort of massive production that had to go into having 3 shows, if it hadn't been 3 shows, this could have all been a lot neater.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was muddled. I think that's my word for the whole pay-per-view.
I agree.
Muddled.
Let's go on to the next match, which actually it was an interesting character match. George the Animal Steele versus Macho Man with Elizabeth.
Yeah, got nothing but good things to say about George.
I like George
and his performance. I think that,
it's a bit of a throwaway match, but
it was a time when obviously Elizabeth was getting more and more concerned with the Macho Man's behaviour because he was becoming obsessed with just winning at any and all costs, and so you had this kind of beginning of a relation, not in
an infatuation.
Not in a weird way, but between George and Elizabeth.
Yeah, he was infatuated about it.
Elizabeth cared about George because George was infatuated with Elizabeth, and so that dynamic was really interesting. And it was it was a bit like they still do it a lot. They repeat a lot of the same angles in WWE history over the course. You can the lovable but ugly underdog who falls in love with the beautiful, the beautiful top diva.
Beauty and the Beast, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's played out a lot in WWE and is still used today. And there was a lot of that. And I thought, you know what, Savage put on a great performance. Made George look pretty strong.
Yeah,
and George looked great because did he kick out of the flying elbow?
He was the first ever person to kick out of Macho Man's elbow drop.
That was nice.
Yeah,
I was that was great.
Who better to give it to? Mm-hmm. I think, as you know, we normally talk about wrestlers that we've not covered within previous pay-per-views. This is the first pay-per-view that George Animal Steele's been in, so I've got a few little facts about him. Prior to his animal gimmick, he'd give a very eloquent promo all the time. Vince McMahon helped him develop his character by making him do a second take of an interview, and basically Animal was getting a bit knocked off with Vince McMahon, constantly asking him to do other takes, and he was saying, "You're an animal, you're supposed to be daft." So basically he garbled the interview, and Vince McMahon loved it, and that's where the character comes from, and it is quite lovable.
He used to just say rah, or like, you go now, or stuff like that.
Yeah, simple words.
So it's just simple words, which is, like you say, George was forever adorable in the eyes of the WWE universe.
Yeah, well, he passed away earlier this year.
Yeah, it was actually a while ago.
Yeah, February, I think. February 2017. Yeah. He portrayed Swedish wrestler and actor Thor Johnson in Tim Burton's Edward, which is a great movie. You should check that out. Great, not just in wrestling, but a great movie maker, Edward, a crazy movie maker with Plan 9 from Outer Space and stuff like that.
Cool.
Prior to the match, he'd started the feud with Macho Man and was developing a storyline where he became infatuated with Elizabeth. This went on for a good year.
And Elizabeth eventually she sided with George for a little while, because George was the kind of he cared about her, I guess, as much as George the Animal could.
And Macho Man didn't care.
Macho Man cared about winning, because one of the most exceptional, I guess, bits of heel work during that time was Macho Man.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Sort of evolution, the story that we went through in WrestleMania, early WrestleMania, first WrestleMania 1, and the classic as well, where Macho Man just gets badder and he just becomes more hated. And this was like, you know what? George is the good guy here, and George could win. George kicks out the elbow. George does the biting. The biting.
George looks like the heel, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, totally.
And he's not, and he's a lovable monster.
Totally.
It's great.
And he does the trademark biting of the arm and the leg and the turnbuckle. I love all that, man. I love all that. Yeah.
He also had a puppet called Mine, which was suggested to him by Hillbilly Jim.
There you go.
Which we'll come into later on.
There you go.
So to the match, Animal looks weird in the ring with his unique hand styles as he's sort of going. That was my Animal Steele impression. Savage keeps leaving the ring at the start of the match. Animal eventually catches Savage and the biting starts.
Biting on the leg, yep.
Is that really a legal move in wrestling?
Was back then, obviously. I don't think George did anything else but bite people.
Yeah, and then he gets distracted by Elizabeth.
Did he ever have a discernible finishing move? I don't think he did. I don't know.
Did he have a what, sorry?
Discernible finishing move.
Yeah, he ate the turnbuckle. That's the biggest finisher in. Press L1 for your finish. Oh, what is it? Triangle on the PS4. Press triangle to eat the turnbuckle. They should so add that to the game.
Is that what was that a thing?
No, it's not a thing, but it should be a thing.
I'd go back and play that. And then the other player just falls to the mat.
Yeah, and he starts rubbing it in the face. Great, which he did in this match. The flowers come out halfway through the match, and they're beating it through flowers. What do you think about the match? A dirty pin on the ropes for the ending.
Yeah, again, serving to legitimise George, not make him look too bad. Obviously, Savage comes out the heel. Yeah, so nice.
Not the best work by either wrestler. A bit of a throwaway match, but it's more watchable than a lot of the rest of the card, I think. Next, we had a John Studd interview, where they're basically talking about the Battle Royale that's coming up later on, and he's got a football in his hand.
Yeah, and it's squash you.
I'm going to rip you apart, and tries to rip open this ball that he just ends up squashing a lot.
The whole wrestling versus football thing that permeated this, it was through the whole thing. I was just like, this is not good. No. What are you doing? No. What are you doing, Vince? What are you doing, Big John Studd?
Absolutely. Next match, Jake the Snake versus George Wells.
Oh man, love a bit of Jake the Snake.
Jake the Snake,
most
great.
Underrated talent in WWE.
I think he was rated. I think people do rate him. I think he went off the rails quite a lot.
Yeah, the whole he was a classic heel, obviously marred by drug problems through his life, and I think it would be interesting to ask the audience. Do you think Anthony that he could have achieved more? Could he have? Does he deserve the status that he has, the legendary status that he has? Given that he did, there's a lot of damage he did to his family and I guess the WWE and his legacy. Does he deserve to be treated as such a legend?
Yeah, because he was.
I do honestly think he's the most underrated talent in WWE history, and I love him. But it'd be interesting to ask you.
I mean, he was the creator of the DDT, wasn't he?
I think he's credited as the
credited as it, and it was a great finishing move. The whole Damien Snake thing was great.
I think it was the first time. It was the first time it got you. got used as a proper finisher, I think. Was this like for Jay? Well, no, he'd been in the WWE for a couple of weeks, but it was one of the first times it had appeared on a pay-per-view or something like that.
Yeah, he'd only been in the WWE for a couple of weeks, and this was his first appearance, and obviously brings out Damien. So the WWF was using new wrestlers and using WrestleMania as a way to introduce people to new wrestlers, which is big because it's risky.
Yeah.
You can't imagine them doing that as much nowadays.
Yeah, totally.
Unless it was someone massive, like they introduced AJ Styles in the Royal Rumble, for example.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, Snake had just entered the WWE, and it was nice to see that. Going back to the DDT, it sort of became through that and through the effects it had on Wells and a bunch of other things, it became one of the greatest finishes they ever used. Right?
Yeah, and is used nowadays with people like Dean Ambrose, who's doing
Alexa Bliss
was
a great DDT as well to finish.
Who does? Sorry,
Alexa Bliss.
Alexa Bliss.
She does a great.
Does she?
Yeah, she does a great.
Twisted Bliss.
No, she's also got.
She has been using the DDT.
She's also got the DDT, yeah, which is great. One of the best moments I think was when Jake brings out Damien, who didn't actually have a name at the time.
No.
He wasn't called Damien. And you see him wrap the snake around Wells,
and he starts foaming at the mouth.
Starts foaming like
brilliant. As a kid, that was scary.
Oh yeah, imagine that.
A little bit about George Wells because we've not covered him yet. He was a former American football player and was drafted into the San Francisco 49ers in 1971. He also played in 8 seasons of the Canadian Football League and started wrestling during his off-season time. So he already had the physique and already had athleticism.
Yeah, it wasn't. He didn't put on a bad match in terms of his own achievements, I guess.
Here's a little fact for you: in the WWF, he was the first tag team partner of Bret Hart.
There you go.
Yeah. So the match. Have you got also about Jake?
No, it was like I say, it was a good match, and Jake came off looking like really strong. I thought.
Yeah, he was selling it. It was an okay match.
Got the signatures in, got the knee lift, got the DDT.
Yeah.
Like I say, it was meant to make Jake look very strong, I think.
But when you're introducing a new character, you've got. It's difficult for the crowd to be behind anything. Oh, yeah. So I quite like some of Jake's slithering on the mat. I sort of missed that a bit later on in his career.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was good. It was okay. It was a bit throwaway.
It was all right. It was
nice to see Jake the Snake in the ring. Next off, we had Hulk Hogan with Jesse the Body Ventura, who was selling Mr. T.
Yeah.
And then we get to...
Jesse does a great job as a heel commentator on the whole, doesn't he?
Oh, he's amazing.
At this time, like, he's supporting Macho Man, and he's what is... Hogan calls him like ridiculous Jesse or something, or something like that, and I really like that. I thought it was good, and I'm a massive fan of Jesse's ability to provoke Hogan.
Yeah, he did, yeah, and he almost like throws away some of his comments as well when Hogan says something, and Jesse just like bats it off as non-truth. Yeah. So next up we had the match. Wow. Again, celebrities come out. We have guest ring announcer Joan Rivers, a young Joan Rivers, here, looking very skinny, quite attractive.
Does a decent job.
Yeah, she ring announcer. Can't get it wrong.
Well, I'm sure it's possible. I'm pretty sure.
I'm
sure there have been some examples. Do find out. Do comment and tell us which examples of ring announcers going off the rails. But
brings out a baseball player, Cab Calloway. And G. Gordon Levy, and timekeeper Herb. I think Herb was a Burger King promotional type thing at the time. Right. So a couple of celebrities there. So it's Roddy Piper, Lou, and Bob Orton. And it's Mr. T with the Haiti Kid and Joe Frazier.
Yeah.
Do you have any information on any of these wrestlers for us?
Well, Joe Frazier, obviously one of the most legendary boxers on the planet.
Had a match, a really famous match with Muhammad Ali, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who was in WrestleMania.
He was the only celebrity to appear on both Stockhead and WrestleMania.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Which Stockhead, do you know?
I'm not sure which Stockhead, but
was it prior or after?
It was prior.
Oh, right, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I quite having that as a sort of star power would have been Vince's ace in the hole.
One of the biggest stars.
That was big, and I mean, like I say, Joe Frazier had some amazing fights and probably one of the best professional boxers in history.
So again, there to legitimise the boxing
very
match.
And I mean, you no matter how good you are, no matter how legendary you are, legitimising that piece of garbage.
It's not easy, is it?
You know, like I said, I think no one knew what was going on.
No.
I mean, apart from the trash talking between Piper and T, which no doubt had some real undertones.
A hell of a lot of real undertones.
You know, like there was a lot of tension there.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna give my favourite character in this match to Piper. Like Piper. You know, like I say, Piper kind of has the same effect on me as like a Randy Orton does these days, where I just don't normally. I appreciate him as a heel, but I don't normally get him necessarily. And Piper nails the heel thing. He nails the performance on the whole today.
Yeah,
right up until the body slam at the end, you know, and the disqualification, and Piper just offloading.
I just think it's awful. I think it's an awful match. A little bit about the Haiti Kid who comes out with Mr. T. There's not a lot to say about him, and he was in the WWF as 1971. He was a small guy, midget. He generally massages Mr. T during the match. But a little bit of interesting information that I found on him was that rumour had it he'd died in 2001. But later on this was proved false because he was found living homeless in Brooklyn in 2009.
Wow.
So he appears in another match, I think, in WrestleMania 3. Probably a really sad story there that there's not. I couldn't get much information.
Yeah,
on.
it's very sad, isn't it?
So yeah. Oh, did you know about the Roddy Piper's fist as well? Before they put it in the boxing glove, normally when you tape up hands in a boxing glove, you tape them flat and then put them in. They taped Roddy Piper's fist closed so that he couldn't shoot on Mr. T. So because he couldn't get his fists right into the end of the boxing glove, he couldn't actually hurt Mr. T as much as he probably would have done. The WWF knew that they was really feuding, and people knew, I think, as well, which is what adds to the drama of the match.
Oh, there was some definite selling points on that feud. People bought into that because of.
But it's just a terrible match. So round one was crap.
Yep.
Is my review.
Yeah, I thought it was all the rounds were crap.
Yeah.
The best bit was the body slam when Piper just lost his shit.
Well, there's a really good bit in a really good story actually. I was listening to it on Stone Cold podcast with Roddy Piper before he passed away. And it's where Roddy Piper goes out of the ring and Mr. T was supposed to punch him, and Roddy Piper was already basically falling out of the ring. He'd already made that sort of decision that's where the spot was going to happen. And Mr. T goes to punch him and actually missed punching him. So Roddy Piper just sort of falls out of the ring at one point from nothing. You know, the wind knocks him over of Mr. T's punch. And Piper was so angry about this that in the start of the fourth round, you see him throw that stool. Did you see that?
I may have noticed that, yeah.
He threw his stool at Mr. T, and it cracks him on the leg, and that was Roddy Piper being really angry that he'd missed that spot, and he did, and Roddy Piper didn't want to look silly, you know, as a wrestler.
I think, to be fair, I don't think there's anything that could be done to save the pair of them from looking ridiculous. No. I mean, Piper came out looking stronger. Like I say, the body slam was just frustration, and
it's a horrible match to watch.
Came out okay, but terrible match. Officially, Mr. T wins.
By disqualification. Roddy Piper said how much he hates the match, and he actually left the WWF after this match for about 4 months, and when he came back, he became the babyface that I love. The babyface Roddy Piper, I think he's great. You disagree?
He has his moments. The Piper's Pit stuff was great, either face or heel.
Okay.
No.
So that was it for the New York crowd. What if you'd paid money to see them 4 matches? How disappointed would you be? It's awful.
I mean, it's not like it doesn't happen these days, man. Like where we watch a pay-per-view, we're disappointed, but you know,
them 4 matches are diabolical, really, in the scheme of things. And the broadcast with Vince McMahon and Susan on commentary is
they were hilarious though. They were some of the best things about it, just purely for amusement's sake.
Didn't even get that.
How do you?
What, that she didn't know anything about wrestling whatsoever?
Yeah, well, how do you even if they're a star, you get people in that know what they're doing.
You should do, yeah.
Next up, Women's Championship. Fabulous Moolah, Velvet McIntyre.
Yeah.
A couple of minutes over, terrible match. The McIntyre belly flop was ridiculous. You know,
yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a pee break in the thing, even though it was the first match in Illinois.
So, you know, the whole she gets up in the second rope, does a splash, misses the splash, and gets pinned. It's like the most ridiculous ending to anything ever in the history of anything.
Oh, I don't know. It's come after a beautiful boxing match.
Oh man, nah, this was more ridiculous. How do you make two women look less relevant and exciting than have one woman practically fall from the top rope onto her stomach and then get pinned? That's never been seen since. There's never been seen before that. And probably has. You do a splash from challenge. Anybody find me
a worse splash?
A worse splash from the second rope to the floor, where you get pinned off the back of it in a women's championship title match.
It was awful.
Somebody find me, please. I will do something. You can tell me what you want me to do, but you've got to find me a belly flop. You've got to find me a belly flop that bad.
A little bit of information about Velvet McIntyre, because she was a women's wrestler that remained prominent in the WWF for a little while, and we've not covered her. When McIntyre and Princess Victoria joined the WWF in 1984, they were immediately recognised as the women's tag team champions.
Nice.
So this is in the days where we had a women's tag team champion. Would you like to see a women's tag team on the current product?
That'd be nice, man. I'm not sure there should be I'm not like, should like a belt would be interesting, but whether there'd be enough time to showcase it, like a women's tag team belt.
Yeah, maybe not. But maybe after the women's championship match this summer, we could have a lot of female wrestlers.
An influx of now if there was an equal amount of women to there were men on the roster, that would be interesting.
If you've got talent like it, then give the time to it.
But then, you can't necessarily. Maybe you could. I don't know. I think it would be a lot of red tape. Separate the woman onto an all-female program, I'm trying to remember. There's a couple of women-specific wrestling federations which just showcase women.
Which is what Glow's about, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Glow the series. Yeah. That would be good, and maybe they could come back and forth onto Raw like the cruiserweights do. Yeah. But then again, some of that segregation. You're segregating the women from the men.
The only real. No, I don't think it is. I think they can do the tournament in a similar way to the Cruiserweight Classic, and I think that'll be interesting. But I do think there's room for more women. I think the women's division can get stale at time with the feuds. I do wish to spend more time on the women in the current product. And the only real tag team I can think of at the minute in the WWF, who's sort of a regular ongoing thing, is Peyton Royce and Billy Kay.
Yes, they're great.
They're really good. So
I mean, there was PMS back in the day, who were a great faction, despite having to deal with clearly Vince McMahon's agenda of seeing lots of women in scantily clad clothing. Terry Runnels, Jacqueline, and Ivory, I think it was.
Right.
During the
PMS.
During the Attitude Era,
Wow.
Pretty Mean Sisters.
Oh, really? That sucks, man.
Now they were good heel women, and they were booked strong.
No, but it sucks as a name. It's so sexist.
With exception to Meat. Meat was a WCW outcast. I'm trying to remember his WCW name. It was not Meat, but he was bought in. He'd been in the Sean Stasiak. There you go. Sean Stasiak was bought into the WWE. He was a WCW kind of cast off, and he was repackaged as Meat, and he was the man Meat for PMS. Digressing.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I'm sure.
Yeah, a strong female faction. Actually, the welcoming committee recently was pretty strong. I'm not comparing. I'm certainly not comparing PMS to that in terms of what I'm thinking is. It's nice to have an all-female faction, a faction of strong women. Mm-hmm. Whatever they were doing, PMS, they were strong preemie sisters. They were strong women trying to do something, trying to break the mold. And I'm all for whether I'm for a female tag team belt, which would be nice to see. I'm certainly all for an all-female faction. I think that'd be great.
Right.
Terrible match. Moving on.
Terrible match. Moving on.
Terrible belly flop.
Gorilla Monsoon. Guillermo all the way during this match and throughout the commentary doesn't have anyone else to play against. Playoff.
And Gwiller is good. He's
a great play-by-play commentator, but he needs that colour as well. And it's so disappointing that he didn't have Jesse with him or anyone to give him any colour, because nobody was giving him anything. Next up was a flag match. I don't know why it was called a flag match, but it was just meant that the winner got to hold the flag up. Nikolai Volkoff with Freddie Blassie versus Corporal Kershner.
You know what? I dissed Kershner the first time round. Like I say, I wasn't entirely sure what his purpose was. But again, this was a classic WWE game of US versus everybody else. And they had Kershner win oddly by intercepting Blassie's cane when he threw it in and whacking Volkov over the head. Of course, if it was a heel doing that, it would have been booed, it would have been terrible, but of course it was Corporal Kershner.
So everyone's okay.
It was okay for him to cheat to win. So you know what? Well, another throwaway match for me.
One of the interesting things I found about this match was when Volkov was doing his gimmick of singing the national anthem at the start of the match, the crowd were booing, and I realised that the crowd had been booing for about 1 hour and 20 minutes into the pay-per-view that we'd got. It had been one constant boo, which sort of talks about the quality of the pay-per-view.
I mean, moving on from this one, because Kershner was fine. Like I say, he had a brief WWE run. He was a decent enough athlete, but kind of stiff. I remember you saying before.
Yeah, he was stiff.
The Blassie Kane was, I guess, an all right ending.
No, it was rubbish. But one of the big things in this match, this was the first time in a pay-per-view since we've been doing it since 1985, that we saw blood in a pay-per-view. Kershner got thrown into the ring post outside, an obvious blade job on his head. A blade job, for those of you that don't know, at the time, they were carrying razor blades in the tape. Taped across their wristbands, I suppose you'd call them.
The tape.
The tape, yeah. And then so you see him held down there, and he's clearly bleeding. What do you think about blood in pay-per-views? Because it's not something we see often these days.
No, not these days, man. The Attitude Era was brilliant for that. I mean, I'm not really big into blading. I think you can. There's good examples of wrestlers that have gone too far with that kind of thing.
Yeah, Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm not really, but then it does add something.
It adds a little bit of drama.
But I was always a massive fan of ECW, man. I was a fan of the hardcore wrestling. I wanted to see people bleed, and maybe I'm a sadistic little bugger, but I enjoyed that. So seeing that at this stage in the WWE's career, this early point. Yeah, it was all right. Yeah.
There was another big match where we had another big blade job, which we'll come to later. But yeah, it was interesting to see the first sort of blade jobs that were on pay-per-view. Just an interesting little note. Next up, the main event of here, the Battle Royale. Referee Dick Butkiss. Do you think he had any difficulties during his school life?
Possibly.
I think there was probably names made up.
Dick Butkus. Yeah. Bless him.
NFL stars in it.
William the Refrigerator Perry put the best performance in of all the football stars.
Yeah, but do you know how much he was paid? He was paid a ridiculous amount. It was $135,000.
Wow.
I mean, if you think King Kong Bundy, because this was in a shoot interview with King Kong Bundy, he got approximately $50,000. Was paying this football star to $135,000.
That is a lot of money. Well, that explains why he did the best in the match then.
Should we go through the wrestlers? A few of the noticeable wrestlers that were in it.
You had the Hart Foundation, man.
The Hart Foundation.
Bret Hart,
Tony Atlas, Hillbilly Jim,
Jim Neidhart,
Dan Spivey, Iron Sheik, Killer Bees, Big John Studd, Bruno Sammartino in his only match in the WWF pay-per-views. Not the one, because obviously he was the manager in the first Wrestlemania, but this was the one that he actually participated in. And Andre the Giant, of course. Do you want to talk about any of the wrestlers in particular?
Well, I feel like I say, it was nice to see Bret Hart. It was nice to see Jim Neidhart there. Yeah. Obviously,
first pay-per-view.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought they put on a really good showing. It kind of established them as they were heels at the time.
They were, yeah, and they had the blue outfits.
Yeah, which was interesting. You know, I mean, it was nice to see. I mean, I guess the WWE are just as bad now as they were then, but you knew Andre was going to win that. You know.
Oh yeah, Andre always won a battle royal.
They were, you know, Andre is the greatest battle. You know, it's the battle royal winner of all time. Of course he is. He's fucking massive compared to everyone else. Even the refrigerator. Like I say, a lot of the angles and a lot of this stuff still happens at WrestleManias, man. They have to have. You know, they were gonna have. You know, was it? Shaquille O'Neal versus Big Show.
Yeah.
You know, they had Bam Bam Bigelow and
in this year's Battle Royale or last year's Battle Royale, a football player got involved in that, didn't they? With
Rob
Mojo.
Gronkowski, Gronk,
I believe he's a football player.
Yeah, he is a football player, man. He's still a big part of it, you know. But the big highlights for me was Bret Hart's debuting in that.
Nice to see.
I mean, it was.
It wasn't his debut in WWF though, was it? It was just his debut on
pay-per-view. I mean, it was total chaos. I'm not really a big fan of battle royals in themselves. I think there's too many cooks in the. It's just a classic case of too many cooks in the kitchen.
It depends on the match.
But
I think it
works for the fans. I think it works for the fans. But you know, especially when you get down to the final four. So it was, you know, it was good, but like anybody else was going to win it, and also. You know, it would have been a shame if the fridge won it, you know, because of a paycheck. Because I feel like, you know, Andre was probably one of the best equipped to do it.
Yeah, and obviously the Andre the Battle Royale now named after Andre in the WWF.
Indeed, Battle Royale.
It's a staple now, isn't it?
Battle Royale champion of the universe, Andre the Giant.
Hillbilly Jim. This was the first time he'd appeared in the WWF, so I've got a couple of notes on him. He appeared on the WWF as a fan originally, so he'd be in the front row at shows and live events, although he'd already wrestled for 10 years, obviously. Roddy Piper invited him onto Piper's Pit and offered to train him, but he didn't take it. He ended up going to Hulk Hogan, who trained him in kayfabe. This was why in the end segment, you see Hulk Hogan in the gym, and he had Hillbilly Jim with him there, so that was all part of the ongoing story at the time. He was often seen in feuds with other big heel men of the WWE at the time, like Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. And he appeared in Legends House on the WWE Network. Have you seen Legends House?
I've seen bits of it.
I really enjoy it. I thought it was a really good program.
Do you not think it kind of exploits them a little bit? It's just a little bit exploitative.
But have you seen the ending of it? No. There's a really nice ending. I won't spoil it for the viewers out there with Pat Patterson.
Go and watch Legends House.
You've got in there Roddy Piper, Jimmy Hart, Tony Atlas, who was in this match, and a couple of others.
I seem to remember no one liking Tony Atlas.
Yeah, no, he struggled. I don't know if he had the star power that a lot of the others, and I think that maybe played on him. Actually,
maybe.
Ends up with the Hart Foundation and Andre in the ring. This is the part of the match where it actually started to get a little bit interesting.
Yeah, it was a nice dynamic with the two. Smaller. You know, you can't really say that about Jim Neidhart very much, but he was a much smaller guy, and it was,
Well, there was a great move where he Irish whipped Bret Hart into Andre, who was having a sit down in the corner, as Andre quite often did.
Yeah.
And Andre puts his boot up, and Bret took a hell of a bump, straight onto the bump. It looked great.
Yeah. Bret was always good though. He was always a good worker.
He was, yeah.
That's
and
this
is
it.
the early part of Bret Hart's career, and when we move on to the great tag team success he had, and great singular success.
His great success overall.
Yeah. Andre throws Bret onto Anvil Neidhart outside the ring. Picks up the win.
Standard.
Jim the Anvil Neidhart is Natalia's dad.
Yes.
In the WWE.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
And he's not brothers with Bret Hart. No. He is married to
the family. Yeah.
He's married to Bret Hart's sister, I believe, which was the same with Davey Boy Smith. He was related by blood.
Yeah.
Not by blood. Sorry, by marriage. Anything else to say about?
No. Moving past that one.
Load of rubbish.
Yep. Kind of awkward.
Dream Team. Greg the Hammer Valentine, Brutal
Beefcake.
Brutal Beefcake. Brutus Beefcake.
Yeah.
With luscious Johnny Valiant versus the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid, with Captain Lou and Ozzy Osbourne.
Indeed, yeah. It was nice to see Ozzy looking very well. With Lou Albano, before moving on to Ozzy, an interesting fact is that he actually got the job because Bruno Sammartino, good old Bruno, spoke to Vince McMahon Sr. and said, this guy can't wrestle. He's a terrible wrestler, but hell yeah, he can talk.
Right.
And Bruno was the one that got
him the job.
Got him the job.
Why did he wear a elastic band in his cheek?
There's a bunch of different reasons that you can research. So I'll let people decide for themselves. But there's a bunch of different reasons why that happened.
Just so weird to me.
Seeing Ozzy as well was pretty great. You know, now as a metal fan, obviously I wouldn't have been able to catch him back in the day. But Ozzy looked good, man. He looked well.
He was high.
Yeah, he was forever high.
Chewing gum to try and keep his mouth shut, I think, at certain points.
Yeah.
Me, Gene Oakland said, Ozzy Osbourne is shaking at ringside, and I thought, yeah, he's high.
Yeah. They say he's from Manchester, if you notice.
Did they?
Yes, they did.
Well, he's not.
Ozzy is from Manchester, I believe. The same as Lord Alfred Hayes.
He did, you're right.
Corrected Hayes.
You're right.
Hayes, and I can't remember, it was Cambridge or something that Lord Alfred Hayes was from, but they did not correct on the Ozzy, on the Ozman.
Who's a Brummie, for those
yeah.
of you that don't know. Going into this match, what did you think about it?
It was one of my favourite of the night. It was decent back and forth. It was probably the standout. I enjoyed Gorilla's referring to Beefcake Brutus as the Beefer.
Did he? I didn't know. That was Mean Gene, was it?
Beefer, yeah.
That's probably a nickname backstage, you know.
Yeah,
probably what he called him backstage. You said there was a lot of back and forth. I thought the match was good. The Bulldogs looked great and delivered some wonderful moves. My only problem with this match, and why I don't think it was great, is because I don't think there was enough back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was too dominant on their side, and although they looked great, I think if there'd been a bit more back and forth, they could have sold that a lot more. It actually sort of feels, watching it, the match could go on a lot longer.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it feels when you're watching it that they're doing all these moves and not getting a pin.
Yeah.
And there's you know,
it's a little bit, it's a challenging one for sure.
Yeah,
it's a challenging one for sure. But it was I think it was a great match. I think it was in the context of a terrible pay-per-view, it was a classic.
Yeah, certainly not a classic match, but in terms of that pay-per-view, yeah.
Nice to see them pick up the win.
Bulldog Irish whipped Greg the Hammer Valentine into the Dynamite Kid, who was on the turnbuckle. Looks like he split his head open. And I thought the
turnbuckle was exposed, but no, I think
he knocked into Dynamite Kid was getting up onto the turnbuckle, and he knocked heads with him, and which led to a little bit of a weird ending because Dynamite Kid never got into the ring to celebrate winning the tag team titles. But you could see blood on his. So I think there was a bit of a head knock, or he fell down and hit something.
Yeah, he was definitely struggling.
Perhaps concussion, which is awful to see, especially with sort of what's happened since.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he obviously suffered in later life. Just goes to show you how careful you got to be with your body, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do want, as much as we want to see wrestlers fight, we don't want to see wrestlers hurt themselves, do we?
Nope.
So next up, we move into the next city.
Yeah.
What an awful. Sure, you've got one okay tag match, but what an awful for the Illinois crowd.
Yeah.
Paul. Next up, we've got Jesse Ventura, Lord Alfred Hayes, and Elvira. Start off the show, had a few problems with the mic at the start, but that's what happens when you try and put on
that's live.
So many.
That's live.
Well, it's not just like, if they'd done it all in one space, maybe they could have sorted out them issues. But because you're going back and forth through 3 different venues, especially at them days, it's hard work.
Yeah, massive challenge for them. I mean, like I say, in some ways they did a great job. In other ways, terrible shit. Terrible.
Hercules Hernandez versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yeah.
This is the first time Hercules has been in, so
Yeah.
got a bit about him.
Great showing for Steamboat.
Was
Carry
it?
on, yeah.
In Jim Crockett Productions, he was known as the Masked Assassin 2, and he appeared as the Masked Assassin 2 in the first ever Stockhead.
Right.
So a bit of so Jim Crockett Productions, as we said before, after Ted Turner bought it out, became WCW, and Stockhead was the biggest competition for WWF at the time in terms of pay-per-views. He had a long-running feud there with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, in the Mid-South wrestling territories, where he was managed by Jim Cornette.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
I love him. First winner of the Royal Rumble,
Duggan,
which we'll be coming up to.
Yeah, Hacksaw Jim Duggan is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Really fun. Anyway, yeah.
He'd been fired from Championship Wrestling from Florida in July 1985 after a fight in the dressing room with Wahoo McDaniel.
Right.
So not necessarily the easiest man to get on with, but that spurred his progression into the WWF, and he actually became a good mid-card player. He did have events with Hulk Hogan later on.
Yeah.
When he entered the cartoon era a little bit more, and he was playing a little bit more face, we saw him there. He was originally managed by Freddie Blassie when he went to the WWF, but he retired not long after. So
yeah. I would have said Hercules is the weakest performer on the card for the whole night. I was not a fan. I was not a fan of his work at all. I mean, like again,
worse than the women.
A very similar. Yeah, actually, good point. The no disrespect to all women, of course, but these women were particularly poor performers, it could have been done so much better.
I'll tell you what could have been great. Do you know who Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was originally supposed to fight?
What, for that pay-per-view?
At this pay-per-view, Bret Hart.
Oh, that would have been exceptional, wouldn't it?
That would have been a great match, yeah, and a much better match on the card probably than this turned out to be. Some okay action in the ring. Steamboat, he was a good talent, wasn't he? He could really carry anyone.
Yeah, one of the, on the reverse, one of the best workers of the whole evening, to be fair.
When you talk about Jake the Snake not getting the recognition, Steamboat, for me, doesn't get any recognition for the wonderful stuff he does. I'd say he was the AJ Styles at the time.
I would, I'd hasten to agree with you on that one. He was incredible. He could
phenomenal. Get a good match out of anyone. Even though this wasn't the strongest.
I mean, the whole crossbody win was, again, very weak and very similar, I guess, to the belly flop. But it was okay. I'm ready to move past that one. It was all right.
But yeah, Ricky was okay. Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart versus Uncle Elmer.
Ridiculous finish. There was a forearm to the chest of Uncle Elmer. Now, Uncle Elmer...
I found it hard to watch.
Yeah. He was... I think they wanted him to be this sort of giant haystack type character. And then obviously they were positioning Goldust as this kind of... what was I saying? They were positioning Adonis like a Goldust type character. Do you know what I mean?
A gender bending.
Gender bending type character. And it goes back to what I was saying before. WWE really likes to recycle old ideas, and I see a lot of Goldust in Adonis, and I see a lot of sort of giant haystacks, and then the Godwins from the Attitude Era. That was kind of pig farmers, slop farmers, etc. That they were a tag team for a while.
Right.
A lot of those in Uncle Elmer. Elmer looks weak as hell. Adonis, Adonis was okay.
It was a comical match,
yes,
and not in a good way. It was a comic. He was overselling everything, way too much.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think Elmer probably had a decent run considering his lack of talent. He was in a stable called the Hillbillies from 85 to 86.
Oh, was he?
For WWE. Yeah, he was the
WWF.
WWF.
Yeah.
World Wrestling Federation, just in case we get told off by the WWF.
What, pandas fighting?
Pandas fighting.
Dressed in Adrian Adonis makeup.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? He was just on a funny note, Uncle Elmer was the worst wrestler according to the Wrestling Observer in 1985. But he did manage an NWA Tag Team title run with Ted DiBiase,
really?
And an AWA Championship run with Jerry the King Lawler. So
Jerry the King Lawler got around a lot, though.
He did. So just goes to show you, don't judge a book by his bearded
hick
cover. But yeah, Elmer was What the hell even was that, man?
Well, the only thing that really made me laugh about this match, because Adonis was overselling everything. Elvira says halfway through the match, I've never seen so much cellulite in the ring.
On Adonis, yeah,
which is funny. Yeah.
Bless him. You know what? Like I said, just like I like Goldust these days, and I like Goldust back in the day. I liked. He wasn't necessarily the best performer, but I liked Adonis took a ridiculous gimmick and ran with it.
It was too far for me, but it had eventually possibly become what the seed was for Goldust, and I think that the first Goldust one was really interesting, and paved the way forward a bit. So next up, Funk Brothers.
Yeah, those funkers.
Those funky Funk Brothers. We'd already seen Terry Funk in the last the last pay-per-view, the Wrestlemania. Hoss Funk and Terry Funk versus Tito Santana
and the JYD,
the Junkyard Dog.
Quite an aggressive match. I enjoyed. I think the Funks were definitely the hardest hitting kind of team of that era. Early indications of Funk's kind of raw, hardcore style.
Agreed.
Definitely for that day and age.
It was sort of table spot later on in the match.
Yeah, and that's why I make the comment. Funk's carry this match for me, which is odd. I really like Tito Santana and the Junkyard Dog as performers, but I feel like the Funk's heel work carries the whole thing.
I agree.
Jimmy Hart reminds me of like Paul Heyman in this, just screaming in the match.
I do like. I love Jimmy Hart.
I think Jimmy Hart was probably one of the, definitely when Paul Heyman made the jump from, I guess, straight up promoter to an advocate. I imagine you probably watched a few Jimmy Hart tapes, maybe just.
I'd imagine so. Yeah.
There was a lot of, a lot of his kind of, because he's shouting in the ring and he's,
he's a character.
Yeah,
he's an action figure. And that's what at the time WWE had a whole range of action figures, and Jimmy Hart would be a character that you'd quite happily have.
Yep.
A little bit of information on Hoss Funk, because this is the first time we've covered him. Obviously, he's the brother of Terry Funk and the son of Dory Funk.
Yeah. Is that work or is that actually real?
Yeah, it's work real. Cool. Yeah, from what I read anyway. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Research.
He was also known as Dory Funk Jr. Obviously, they were calling him Hoss Funk.
Yeah, I remember Dory. Yeah.
When he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, he was inducted as Dory Funk Jr. with his brother Terry, and that was in 2009. Yep.
Carry on.
That's all right. He was credited with the invention of the Texas cloverleaf.
There you go.
Quite interesting. He became a trainer a little bit later on in his life. At the Funking Conservatory Professional Wrestling School.
Yeah, Terry Funk had, I think there was Funk's wrestling school.
It could have been, probably all the Funks, because they had such a massive influence, especially Terry Funk.
I know he had his own wrestling school. Yeah,
and his students include Jeff and Matt Hardy,
nice.
Lita.
We're talking Dory.
Yes, Lita, Christian and Edge, Kurt Angle, Mickey James and Ted DiBiase and Tess.
Wow.
So some incredible names there.
Test as in
Test, yeah.
Yeah, man. So
Attitude era.
Great talent to lose, but anyway, yeah.
So yeah, really, really influential on the future of wrestling and the incredible performers that they were.
Well, Terry's still bloody going.
He is, yeah.
Jeepers creepers.
Can't understand a word he says.
Well, no. But then, it's like me and you. No one understands what we're saying in this podcast, but we're going to keep...
from Hull and we're going to
keep going anyway, you know what I mean? It's fine. We're like the Terry Funk of podcasts. Just break out the chainsaw in a minute.
Chainsaw Charlie.
Yeah, Chainsaw Charlie. Oh man, I love that. We should watch some of those matches.
Well, I'm sure we'll get. I can't wait to get to matches. Yeah. It's so difficult because watching this is such a slog compared to some of the Attitude Era stuff, which will fly.
But that's what we grew up on. Nice end. All things considered, the cheat to win with Hart throwing in the megaphone. I thought that was nicely done. I thought the Tito and JYD team was a great face team, and they were, they took it to the heels, but the heels got the classic cheat to win move with the foreign object. It was good. It was one of the better matches of the night.
There was a lot more back and forth than the previous tag match, and like I said, I enjoyed that. I don't think the in-ring skills showed off as much as the British Bulldogs, but it was an okay match. I do think that the wrong team got the win. I think if they'd had the Junkyard Dog win, because the match wasn't that important in terms of and sometimes you've got to give the faces a win to pop the crowd a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, there was multiple.
It was keeping. To be honest, I think it was probably just to keep the crowd interested at that point as well. You know what I mean? To have that kind of that ending and the way that they did it, because there was a lot of.
I just think Junkyard Dog it would have been better for them to win.
Yeah, it was a slog. It was a slog to watch. You know, like I say for us, but it was a slog to watch for people there. There was a lot of negative energy in that arena. You could tell.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. So next up we had Hulk Hogan's private gym with Hulk Hogan and Hillbilly Jim. He was doing a move, an exercise where he tied a dumbbell to his neck and started lifting himself up. I don't think he was lifting himself up though. No. I think he was actually stepped on something, because when you do, you pull yourself up. You would be messed up. A bit weird.
That was actually it was meant to look make Hogan look strong, kind of made him look ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was preempting his sex tape years later. Just ways to make yourself look ridiculous. Except it wasn't a big thing around his neck, a big ball around his neck. It was his big white ass.
He was holding it, yeah. Anyway, King Kong Bundy interrupted a title match between Don Morocco and Hulk Hogan. We saw a little promo of that, but that's what the reason for the WrestleMania match. It's actually quite amazing, really, that a title match can happen over something that was quite small. It wasn't a massive storyline, a couple of weeks before.
I think it sold itself in terms of it was a classic sort of face-heel dynamic, almost like a David Goliath type thing.
Yeah,
they were billing, King Kong Bundy. He was the early Braun Strowman type.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be ferocious and fearsome. Yeah. And you know what? He had his moments of being ferocious and fearsome. Did Bundy? He was a big dude with a lot of potential for a big guy. But I thought his work here was kind of mediocre. I'm talking about Bundy, but I enjoyed Bobby the Brain Heenan. He was the highlight for me.
We've got a little bit more before I go to the match, but yeah, I agree with you. Bobby Heenan was great, and there's a great story actually about him in this match. So there was a whole storyline going into the match about Hulk's ribs being hurt, so not at 100%, and we saw that being used a few times during the match. I was watching an interview with Ted Bundy. Wow. Ted Bundy versus Hulk Hogan. Now there is a dream match.
Holy shit, dude. Ted Bundy.
King Kong Bundy.
King Kong Ted
wanted
Bundy.
To kick over the Hulk as he was being carried off with the stretchers, but
which would have been a super extreme heel move.
It would have been super extreme, and someone put a stop to it. But that would have been probably a more feud going into it. Then we had an interview with Jesse Ventura with Bobby the Brain Heenan and King Kong Bundy. A really interesting story about Jesse Ventura here. He was, at the time, the WWF didn't have a union, so none of the wrestlers were in unions, and Jesse the Ventura thought that this was really bad, because obviously there was a lot of health issues that wrestlers had.
Still is today.
Yeah. And although the WWF does look after a lot of the wrestlers now, especially the current time, and have reached out to a lot of the old people that have had issues as well, even though they've got concussion cases, and I'm sure it's very much on an individual basis.
To be fair to Vince, he does fork out for rehabilitation.
I think it probably depends who you are and what Vince gets out of it as well, unfortunately. So Jesse Ventura wanted to unionise the locker room. Vince heard about it and went mental, and basically Jesse Ventura, the wrestlers were all saying, "Oh yeah, we'll come with you and unionise, and we'll get some health care and stuff like that." As soon as they found out Vince had heard about it, they all backed off, and Jesse just got a bollocking. So Jesse actually left the WWF not long after this pay-per-view. Come back a couple of months later after he'd got in with the Screen Actors Guild Union. So at that point he was covered, and I think he sort of took a step back. But there's a little bit of backstage politics of what was happening at the time. So back to the match, we have the guest ring announcer, the manager of Los Angeles Dodgers, Tommy Lasorda, guest timekeeper, young actor and star of Silver Spoons, Rocky Schroeder, referee, TV star Robert Conrad. I think he was in some films as well.
Yeah.
Was there any reason to have any of these there? Didn't affect the match at all.
Just star power, I guess.
Star power.
Again,
but
just for the casual. WrestleMania, like I said before, is the time of year where there's a chance that WWE fans that casual wrestling fans become invested in the brand. I mean, it got you, didn't it? So that's
to an extent, yeah.
To an extent, so it's about having that celebrity thing and bringing the outsiders
Yeah.
in, even
No
though
need for it, though.
even though it was absolutely pointless.
It doesn't affect the match at all. So it's for the WWF World Championship. It's inside a steel cage. How many other steel cage matches has there been in WrestleMania history, Dom?
I don't know, Anthony. You're going to tell me.
I am going to tell you. There has been no other matches in a steel cage. We've seen a cell 3 times with... I didn't write this down. I think it was Big Boss Man.
Cool.
Was in a cell match.
Someone correct us if they need to.
With a hanging.
That was
at WrestleMania, wasn't it?
Dark, man. Yeah, that was dark.
Can't wait to go into that one. Then we had Shane McMahon in a Hell in a Cell match and Triple H in a Hell in a Cell match. So a traditional steel cage has only been used once, and that was in WrestleMania 2.
Well, there you go.
And it wasn't the normal chicken wire cage. It was a big blocky blue one, basically to help them.
Kind of ugly as.
I quite like it because the cameras can get in and you don't get as much blue in the cameras, but it was obviously there to help Hulk and King Kong Bundy scale it if they needed to. I don't think that affected it too much. So I don't think they used the cage that much actually.
No.
Hulk, when he entered, I am the real American. A good entrance actually.
Yeah.
Entered over the top of the steel cage.
Good face entrance.
Yeah, good face entrance. Did the Hulk shirt rip at the top of the steel cage. He was in his yellow and red, so we're really into Hulkamania Hulk now. He'd been giving okay promos all night, sort of classic Hulk Hogan.
Eat your vitamins, say your prayers, all the feel-good stuff for the kids.
Yeah. So let's talk about the match. He was trying to escape quite a bit.
Yeah. Like I say, love the face heel dynamic, and that's something WWE get right almost every time.
Yeah, a bit obvious, though, I'd say.
Well, yeah,
but that's Hulk Hogan all over.
Yeah,
it's great, but now to look back, it's very obvious.
Yeah, they wanted to make it look like Hogan was triumphing against the odds. You had Heenan getting a little bit involved. Obviously, it was a nice touch, I think, when Hogan managed to escape over the top of the cage.
Yeah, nice.
He went after Heenan, you know what I mean?
Oh, that was great.
That was really nice, and he got him in the cage and stuff, so...
As part of the match, we saw... I want to say Ted Bundy again, but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, well...
We saw King Kong Bundy go into the cell wall and a blatant blade job.
I was going to say, I don't know what you dream about, mate, but Ted Bundy...
Ted Bundy versus
It was
Hulk
never
Hogan.
There.
There's a tape.
There's a tape for Hogan.
Blade
job, yeah.
So we saw more blood. Quite a nice blade job, actually.
Do you think it was just a way to get more people in, people talking about the blood?
It was interesting, actually. I was watching a little bit about King Kong Bundy talk about the match and how Hulk was going to blade for him. It was something that King Kong Bundy had never asked anyone else to do. Mm-hmm. But Vince McMahon didn't want it to happen because he didn't want Hulk to be celebrating with the kids with blood all over his face.
Yeah.
After the win. So they avoided that. There was a bit of back and forth. Bundy big splash. Hogan was selling his ribs. He took off his rib brace at one point and tied him to the thing. It wasn't really a wrestling match, was it?
No, it was a
Hogan match, really.
Yes, but it was a let's make Hogan look incredible, let's make him look invincible, and they did a great job. We all grew up as kids,
loving Hulk Hogan,
believing Hulk Hogan was invincible and he could take anything, and much in the same way that we believe Mick Foley could do years later, and that, I think that WWE was always really, really great at doing that, building up characters to make them appear invincible.
I think it's difficult to watch it back because we've seen how far wrestling's come and the sort of
that is a challenge.
The interesting sort of dynamics that we can get in the ring, and the interest.
Well, it was an interesting, like I say, I thought there was some interesting like Savage and George was a great dynamic. It was possible to do something.
Yeah, it was possible. And the match next year, spoiler alert, I keep going on about it, and I can't wait to talk about this match. Ricky Dragon Steamboat and Randy Savage. In this era, it was possible to have an incredible wrestling match that still holds true today and still holds amazing today.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Yeah, this was not. This was a let's make Hogan look strong.
Yeah.
I on the whole, the pay-per-view was okay. I'd give it 2 out of 5 of our gay stars.
I'd give it half a star.
It had its moments. The worst moment was the belly flop in the female championship match. One of the best moments was just George Steele kicking out the elbow for the first time. No one believed that was going to happen.
Which was the best match? I'd go for the Bulldogs and the Dream Team. It's a tough one.
I think I'm going to go with this. I think I'm going to go with you, with the Bulldogs. And yeah.
I think there's problems with the match, but there was problems in the whole pay-per-view.
But then I also liked, just because I'm a massive fan, I like Jake the Snake showing, but it wasn't a great all-round match. It was very much...
It got better.
Like Hogan's not necessarily domination. The matches were very clearly geared towards helping the athletes get over. So Hogan's was geared towards very specifically making Hogan into an absolute star. The Battle Royal was never going to be anyone else but Andre, and making him look making him look like an absolute beast. Kurt. These things are all. That's the problem with this pay-per-view. And a lot of pay-per-views from this era was we're going to find so predictable. Like Corporal Kershner was going to win at WrestleMania. He was the American hero. He was going to win at Mania.
Yeah, I think there's a few matches. I don't really understand why the Funks won. I think that should have gone the other way. An interesting point about the last Hogan match, because we talked a little bit about Heenan. Heenan had checked himself into a hospital a few days before and had an MRI scan.
Wow.
Basically called up WWF and said, I'm not going to be able to make it to WrestleMania. I've had a MRI scan and I've got a couple of fractured vertebrae. That he'd been dealing with for years before the event. WWF called him the day before and says, if you don't turn up, you'll be fired, which is mad. So in a way, it puts a tin on that end spot with Heenan. I mean, it's a good spot, but for a guy to be doing that with 2 fractured vertebrae... And the day after, he flew back and went straight back to the hospital.
That whole, he got thrown into the cage, didn't he?
Yeah.
Took it very well.
Took a bump,
so you're gonna give it half. I'm gonna give
half a star.
I'm gonna give it 2.
2. What did you give WrestleMania 1?
Did I give it less? I don't know. Maybe I'm being really generous. I think I gave it 3. I think I gave WrestleMania 1 3 stars.
I can't remember. Let us know in the comments.
Let us know in the comments what you guys think about it in terms of your gay stars.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Give me a whole yes stars.
Give me a whole yes. We call them gay stars.
We can call them gay stars. I'm just clarifying for the people.
Oh yeah, good point for the peeps.
Worst WrestleMania of all time for me, man. Easily.
Well, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out some. Like I say, there's some.
You would give that 3 stars. What would you give this year's WrestleMania?
No, this was what I give it. 2.
2 stars.
2 gay stars.
You're very nice.
I think I'm the nice one in this duo.
I think you might be. Half a star, man. Rubbish.
Yeah, I think I'm giving it because Jake the Snake was nice to see. It was really nice to see Jake.
Yep.
It was nice to see the Bulldogs do well. Ozzy was good, but like I say, these are just I am aware. Bobby the Brain's heel work. Captain New But there was a lot of really credible athletes and stars in this.
There was a lot of really credible athletes doing real crap.
Jack all. So in summary, I'm going to go 2 out of 5. You're going to go half. Let us know what you think of the Mania in the comments. If we've missed anything or if we've got anything wrong, do feel free to correct us and give us your feedback and points of view. Don't forget to like us on Patreon / give me a whole yeah.
Give me a whole yeah.
Facebook, give me a whole yeah. Twitter, give me a whole yeah. If we're shit, then do tell us and tweet us so we can be better. And we're really enjoying doing these for you guys, so let us know how they're going. Don't forget to check out Wrestlemania 1, our first episode, and we will be back next
Friday.
Yeah, next Friday.
I believe it's the big event next in 1986. I think it is.
Big event. So we'll see you soon. Keep it gay.